One of the big challenges of running startups is to put together the right crew. So you have some challenges. One thing is you don't have much money normally, so you cannot pay. In many cases, you cannot pay normal market salary. You pay a small salary. You expect a very big work effort. There's lots of uncertainty. And the company might go bankrupt. It's a little detail, but we might go bankrupt. So it's not that easy to recruit people. Of course, there are some sweeteners to it. First of all, you might be making history here. We are creating something new. We are changing the world in a minor way. You can get stock options. If we become worth 1 billion, you become worth 10 million. It's very informal. You can bring your dog for the work. You are allowed to listen to loud hard rock music while you are coding, whatever. So there are good sides and bad sides, but it certainly takes some talent sometimes to recruit people in the beginning. How do you find people? To start with, of course, you think about who you know. Then you can ask the people who work in a company who they know. Do you know anybody that you've worked with before that you think are good, that are clever, that would fit in? You can advertise it on your website. You can write, "We're looking for staff." That has another effect. It sends a signal that you're expanding. That's good. You can do the same on social media, right? Update, we're looking for a person for this, or we're looking for 10 people for that. When you do press interviews, you can mention that you're recruiting. And I would say across anything that when you talk out there in the public about that you're recruiting, you're not only trying to find people, which can be good, but you're also sending a signal that this company is doing well. Otherwise, it wouldn't be recruiting. Then there's a whole different category, which is that you hire some consultant to do it. So you hire some headhunter or whatever it's called to look for candidates for you. And there you have to be very careful about which contract you enter. So what happens if they find somebody and they want X% of the salary, and then after 4 months the person leaves because the person doesn't fit in, it gets fired by you or leaves on his or her own account. So do you still have to pay for that service, which was not very good apparently. So it's very important that you consider these situations where it doesn't work so well. What do you have to pay for that? One thing I like to do is if I do a speech and I have a startup company, I go on stage and talk about the company. There I have the possibility to sell us, the idea, the vision, what we're doing, why the market is cool. And then at the end of it, on my last slide, there's an email address or some other contact information. And then I also say, by the way, at the coffee break at 11 o'clock, I will be down in the main hall next to the kiosk, Starbucks or whatever, together with some of my staff. If any of you wants to talk with us about our products, about investing, or you would like to work in our organization, meet us there. And the good thing is they just saw you on stage. They just heard about what you do. They saw the passion and then they like it. So it's a great way to recruit. Now, what do you do if you found somebody who's potentially interested in working in your company, but you don't know if it's the right person? You have to find out, first of all, if it's an honest person, is an efficient person, and if the culture works, and if the professional skills are really the ones you're looking for. So in most CVs that people will give you, there will be some references, at least if it's professional. They list some people that you can call or write to get some references. This is what you call front door references. They are the ones that they present to you. Typically, these people have been vetted, so they have called these people and said, would you mind being a reference for me? And so there's a good chemistry normally between the people and their own references, which also means that you might suspect that the reference is a little bit biased, a little bit too positive. One way to counter that I like quite a lot is to say, when you are talking with a person like that, the person is giving a lot of favorable statements, then you say, okay, so if we consider Joe for this job, on a scale from 0 to 10, where would you put him? And then maybe you get the answer 8. And you can say, why not 10? And that will force the person to explain that there are some Arbeiterbeis, there are some things that you should be a little bit concerned about. So that might work. So the backdoor references are the ones they didn't give. So you look at the CV, look at where the person has worked, and there are some companies where there are no references. You try to contact them and ask them, can you recall this person? How was that? And that's sometimes where you hear that there are problems. When you do references, you might hear something that raises a bit of a suspicion. Also, that can also happen when you do interviews. And if you really want to hire somebody, but there's one thing that you feel is dodgy, a little bit suspect, then you might hire detectives. And what these detectives normally do is not that they're sitting in a car with a camera or anything like that. No, they search databases. So they search for signs of crime, for bankruptcies, for you being prosecuted by somebody. And so they raise red flags from public sources, but public sources that are not that easy for you to find. And I've been in a situation where we were very close to hire a person for a very senior position. And then we just didn't like that when we said, okay, so where do we send the contract to? The answer was like, well, I travel around, I'll just come and pick it up. So, what, you're not specific about where you live? We didn't like that. So we hired this agency, and they found out that this person was wanted from several bankruptcies where the behavior had not been correct. So he was trying to avoid having a formal address. So we were really dodging a bullet there. So it's not that expensive, and if you have doubt in such a case, you can use that. There's nothing wrong in that. So what happens once you've found somebody you want to hire? Well, you have to agree on a title, and you have to agree on a compensation package. One thing I think you should be careful with is titles, because sometimes the people you recruit in the beginning, they're risk takers, they have a fantastic motivation and attitude, but they're not the most talented people you can ever get into your organization, not always. So be a little bit careful with taking somebody in who's the first salesman and then giving that person the title Global Head of Sales. Because it might be that 2 or 3 years from now, your company is going like this, and you get applicants who are really, really professional, top salespeople. So what do? You have this senior top vice president of global sales, and now you get a person in who's much better. What do you do with the other person? So be a little bit careful with what you call the first employees. Leave room for later if you want to put somebody above them. So there's the salary. Salary has to be low. In almost all startups, salaries have to be low. Then you can have bonuses, but that's mainly relevant for somebody who does something that's really easy to measure and very variable. So that makes it salespeople. What you very often do is you put them on a fixed salary the first 3 months, because they need 3 months, to build up a pipeline of potential clients and to get familiar with the product. And then after that, they have to live from the bonus. Maybe the fixed salary goes down as you expect the bonus to go up. Great thing about having a big bonus allocation is that if you have a salesperson who doesn't perform, that means that the person doesn't get enough bonus, and that probably means that the person will choose to leave on his own account. The last part is the stock options. Employee Stock Option Program, as it's called, or ESOP. The standard for startup companies around the world is around 10%. There are some entrepreneurial centers where it's lower, it's maybe 4 or 5%, some higher, but I don't think you go wrong anywhere if you have 10% allocated to stock options. So how does that work? If the company keeps expanding, you keep getting new employees in, and you don't know for sure how much it will expand, don't you run out of stock options at a certain point and then you cannot offer it anymore? Well, normally you don't, and there are a couple of reasons for that. First, it's not that when they come in, they get the stock, of course. They get an option to buy the stock in the future, but that option, that the whole program vests. So the typical vesting period is 4 years. So you have to work in a company for 4 years, and then you get every year or every half year or however it's done, you get allocated more and more of your stock options. And after the 4 years, you have received them all. But and what happens is if somebody leaves the company on their own accord or gets fired, the vesting stops there. The second thing is that if the company really expands, so it needs to hire more and more people, that's where you have the problem of potentially running out of stock options. But what you do normally is you make a capital increase. And you make a capital increase as a part of the normal funding cycle where you go through different funding rounds until you reach profitability. So when you make a capital increase, certainly the 10% that were allocated before gets diluted. Maybe now it's 7%. So you've got 3% more, and so on. So that's the way you can keep giving stock options on all the way out. This is very important because if people believe that this is a real winning company, they might work like crazy almost entirely. Apart from that they enjoy it, then it's almost entirely because they want to make money on the stock options. And you have cases where secretaries become millionaires, or certainly where people in management positions or key programmers, for instance, they work in a company that does really well and they walk out after X years with a lot of money. And that's very motivating. And by the way, it's also very good for society because that enables them to start their own companies with that money, which is very often what they do.
Do you speak